I'm Molly. I am also in collective acts and have been active in women's rights activism. And I guess the reason that I'm probably up on the panel is the reason that I'm probably up on the panel is sort of as a lay voice, because this isn't what I do professionally, but having gone in last year and sort of figured out how to make my way around the capital and the information. And that's at least why I thought it would be really good to have something like this, and so I can share sort of what I found, and that it can be done, never having to that before.
And I'm Kathy Woodson with organizing, and I think my role here is to talk about how to engage everyday citizens to be their own lobbyists and not just dependent on professional lobbying, that they can do it themselves and kind of walk through that process and inspire them to do it.
I'm Scott Price. I'm now the president of the Alliance for Progressive Values. I was the policy director. We're a multi-issue not-for-profit. We're about 2 years in existence, and we do a lot of work with the VA. We were there last year, and we'll be there again this year. And I'm sort of a backstop, I think.
Hey, I'm Kat McNeil. I run an online calendar called Active RVA, where I archive activist events that come across my radar. I'm also a member of Food Not Bounds, and I'm here because I've spent the last couple days up to my eyeballs in the General Assembly website looking at all the bills. So I should hopefully be able to give a little bit of insight on that. I also have the list of all the bills we might discuss today online. And I can give you guys that URL at the end of the session so that you can go look it up, and there are hyperlinks there to the full language and other information. So if you need to go more specifically into a particular piece of legislation, that's already been set up.
Great, thank you. We also wanted to get to know all of you, and I think maybe some of us know each other and some of us don't. And no introductions and names, that's going to take a long time, but we wanted to know, just sort of maybe get an idea of what people here, what their level of knowledge of the General Assembly process is. Has anyone ever sat in a subcommittee hearing at the General Assembly? Just a show of hands. Anyone ever talked to a legislator or a legislative aide during the... Okay, all right, so this is pretty good. Awesome. I guess first we wanted to start with just sort of going over the process of how a bill gets to the floor. And I'm going to defer maybe to Kathy and Scott.
This is a very handy tool that I got at the General Assembly building last year. At the very front as you walk in, there are two women behind the desk. One of them is the Secretary of the Senate. The other one, I don't know her official title. They're very friendly and helpful allies if you just sort of engage them. And so there's actually a plethora of tools that are available both online and in physical copy there. And one of the first ones that I wanted to find after kind of leaving the protest February 20th, knowing that the ultrasound personhood bills were somewhere mid-process, was how it actually worked. And so this is just an actual handy tool, but I would probably defer to either Scott or Kathy if you want to go up, and I can read it and I can get one interpretation. But
I think one of the things that's important, since a lot of you have been through to the General Assembly, you know the process. If you are taking someone the first time, it's great if you have access to a computer and you download this and you walk them through it, rather than have them sit there in a committee session wondering what's going on. You know, they're going to hear language, they're going to hear pass, fail, defer for the day, move to the floor. There'll be all sorts of stuff. So if you have that ability to help people walk through how a bill becomes law in Virginia is very helpful. And you know, you can do it in a fun way, and just say, you know, easy. Nobody's an expert, not even the legislators. I don't think they're experts either. So, you know, it has to be read 3 times. First, it has to be assigned to committee, which the chair will assign to a subcommittee. Has to get out of subcommittee to full committee, from full committee to the floor, and be read 3 times. That's the easy, simple way to help people understand it. Where we come in as regular folks, everyday folks, in this process is that if we are really feeling strong about a piece of legislation, we have to get to it in subcommittee and committee before it gets to the floor. And that's what I think we want to try to focus on. But, you know, those committees and subcommittees are very, very important. And that's where you make a difference, and your phone calls make a difference, and your emails make a difference, and people going to see their legislators make a difference, in addition to lobby days. It's not just going on a lobby day, but it's going all the time if you can. And if you can't, you can make phone calls, you can email them, and they do pay attention to that. From a grassroots perspective, we've been told, you know, if they start getting 10, 15 emails, they think something, there's a movement. We kind of think, wow, that's all it takes to get you to pay attention, let's get some more. So our goal is always to get people to do what they can do, because everybody can't take off work and go sit in a subcommittee. Some subcommittees meet at 7:30 a.m. Some meet, they're scheduled to meet and then they end up canceling it or postponing. All sorts of things can happen. We'll talk about a little of that. But that's the quick overview of how the bill goes to become law. It goes, it's assigned to committee. The chairperson is assigned to a subcommittee. It has to come out of committee, and the Senate has 11 committees and the House has 14 committees. Then it goes to the floor for 3 readings before they vote on it.
And I guess one thing about the subcommittees, I'll just kind of ask you a question because I'm also still learning. That's one thing we wanted to stress, that it's a learning process all the time, I think, and you learn some stuff and then you just keep talking to people and learning more. But at the subcommittees, that's where people actually can speak, correct?
They can speak at
subcommittee
subcommittee
as well.
and committee,
Yeah.
both
One
places.
of the things too to say is that what usually happens is, and this is, subcommittees are more important than they used to be, especially on the House side. Several years ago, you know, they're only in session for 45 days this year. So they're going to move an enormous amount of legislation. So what the Speaker had asked several years ago was that bills that were going to require a lot of testimony, that were going to be controversial, etc. That was a legitimate, you know, sort of House business kind of thing. But it does mean that controversial bills, their first hearing, their first time around, often are being heard at 7:30 in the morning in front of small subcommittees, which could be as few as 3 people. So those are places you really want to watch, because those are places where good bills die or where bad bills get railroaded through. So we really want to be careful about that, because technically what's supposed to happen, this is not what necessarily happens, but is that the bill gets heard at subcommittee, there's testimony, they vote on reporting the bill, which is a term that will be reported up to the, back to the committee. When they go to the committee, they'll take reports from that subcommittee, and the subcommittee chairman will then say, we had this bill and this bill and this bill, and we voted this way on this bill, and we voted this way on this bill, and so on and so forth. If the chairman of that committee, if he wants to move a bill, he'll try to hold off debate. You know, at this point, they'll try to keep debate down, because they'll say, well, this bill's already been heard. So subcommittee is really important. You really, really want to watch that. I will say that this year, because of the nature, we have 100 members in the House and 40 senators. And right now, the Republican Party controls 67, 68. Yeah, Lacey Putney, he caucuses with the GOP. They have complete control of the House. And so there are bills that we're going to be following on the House side that I'm honestly not going to follow as closely, because we can have almost no impact on those bills. We're going to, you know, I mean, with all these bills, and there are going to be lots and lots of bills, we're following, APB is following, I don't know, 40 or 45 bills right now, and that'll go up before the end of the session by a long shot. So you have to sort of husband your time. A lot of the bills that make it over to the Senate side is where most of the fights are going to be.
And I just want to add to Scott, which when you hear thousands of bills going through, and you get those alerts, or you talk to people when you're at the GA about those bills, find out what bills Scott's following, and talk to him about that. It's humanly impossible, because you could have a list of 100 bills, and it moves fast and you can't follow them. So understanding who the allies are and who the partner groups are that are following which interest groups, who's following voter suppression bills, who's following any of the healthcare related bills. You know, knowing who those folks are and really touching base with them will help you a lot. And I just want to piggyback with Scott and say, you know, there are many tactics used in subcommittees and committees to move legislation. And sometimes just being sure you know who's on those committees will give you some hint as to how they will manage that subcommittee or that committee. If it's a powerful person, if the chair is a powerful person, they have influence over how things happen. And it's just important to know that. And getting to know the folks that are hanging out every day down there when you're hanging out is very helpful. So, you know, if you see Scott around, grab him and say, hey, can you talk to me a minute about what does this mean? I just heard this in committee. And what does that mean? And what's going to happen?
Yeah, there are a number of terminologies we'll hear traffic light in on a certain corner. That bill is going to get assigned to a committee. Committee chairman will then look at that bill and he'll say, does this need to go to subcommittee? Is this a controversial bill? Let's say we decide it is a controversial bill for some reason. It's going to go to subcommittee. I just lost my train of thought. What I think we're dealing with a bill like that is, do we know at the subcommittee level who's on that subcommittee? Do we know when that bill is going to get heard? There are tactics. This is something that happened at the congressional level a lot, that didn't used to happen in Virginia, but is happening more and more. We've seen bills that were introduced that never got a hearing, that never got anything. Last year, Kay Corey, who is a name you'll hear, she's a delegate from Northern Virginia. She had a number of gun bills. Ben Klein, who was the committee chairman for the committee that they were assigned to, he put those bills in his pocket. They were never heard. That's something that used to not happen. It used to be a bill at least had a chance of an up and down vote. But we're watching more of that stuff. One of the things you may hear us asking you to do is to call that committee chairman and ask them to give that bill a fair hearing. Even if the bill is going to fail, sometimes we need it because we want to get out there and get the testimony on record and get people to know and get them energized about that language.
That's some great commentary on what happens
in the General Assembly building, and we didn't know that was going to happen, so a lot of folks was trying to shepherd people through, get them through security, get them up to the bill room. The chair looked out and saw people they'd never seen before, and they see people standing around the wall, never brought the patrons sitting there, people are ready to testify. 11:29, nothing happened. 11:30, recess, go, we're done. Bill died.
I wanted to say one thing that I've noticed, I've spent 2 weeks on legislation myself, but one of the things you'll find is
you really need to get there early, especially on controversial bills, because literature will be on the table. Particularly the opponents have already gotten their folks ready to show up and talk, so you don't take for granted that you already know what's happening.
the website that we have is really, really good, and so you can get the agenda of the bills, all the website.
But the document, there's a difference. The document, cut you off, but that confused people. The agenda are all the bills that have been referenced to committee. The docket is what they're going to hear today. Now, if you read the fine print, they'll say, we may not hear any of these bills today, or we may hear bills that aren't on the docket.
Right.
But technically, if it's on the docket, they plan on seeing it that day.
So, which I always characterize that our system is not a user-friendly process for working people. People may take off from work. And I talk from the grassroots perspective because we're always trying to get citizens to go and speak for themselves. You know, somebody has to take off a day from work and then you get there and the bill is not heard. It's kind of, ugh. So.
Something else about that too. I also, well, very much you should go, you should participate. But you have to bear in mind that they're running a lot of bills. So you're not going to get a situation where everybody gets to speak. Sometimes it's better if you can simply have the patron say, would everybody who supports my bill or opposes this bill please stand? You may not even go and you may not get a chance to talk. Especially, they want testimony. Testimony is not the same thing as saying, I'm Scott Price and I don't like this bill, and then giving them a lecture on good government or something like that. They want specifics. And if the person in front of you just said what you were planning on saying, sometimes it's better, honestly, to sit down. And again, I'm not telling you not, it's problematic, and they will rush you along, and then they will say, well, we're just not going to take any more testimony because we've got to move on.
But yeah, that's a pretty good point. I think presence, though,
Is a big deal.
Is huge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something I think that we learned probably last
Visibility.
year. Visibility
Yeah.
and presence, and just even just being up, and then we'll talk about, the House and the Senate and things like that in a minute, but just having a presence there and then knowing that you're there and watching.
And if you can go 2x2, 4x4, 3x3, however you want to go, it's better than going by yourself. First of all, you need some support throughout the day to kind of help figure some things out. And second of all, you need to chat about what you just heard. And because things, again, I've been in subcommittee. How many of you have been in subcommittees and you're straining to hear what they're saying? Because you can't hear. So, position a person, if it's two of you, you sit there, I'm going to sit here so we can both catch what's being said and take notes. I always recommend that those things, please bring pencil and paper, pen and paper to take notes, because you will not remember everything that they say. Plus, there's key terminology that might be used that means something different when it goes before committee.
Just to jump in on something that Glenn said a little bit ago in terms of the substitutes as a resource, there's a bill room downstairs in the General Assembly building, which just very basically there's a Capitol where the actual sessions are heard. There's the General Assembly building, which is where committee meetings are. I know, okay. Where committee meetings are and where offices are. But downstairs in the General Assembly building, which is the same building with a very nice stage at the front of the desk, is the bill room. And you can go down there and request copies of anything. You have to know what you want to ask them for. But they're also very friendly and helpful. And for instance, with the substitute that was put on the ultrasound bill last year, I actually had a copy of it before the senators, because as soon as I heard that there was one there, I trotted across. They're still in session. I trotted across. I went down to my new buddies downstairs, and literally it was still being done. And waited, for them to be done and hand them out. And so we were able to immediately have it and start looking through what the changes were and how we would respond to them.
And also computers down there too. Which, by the way, are not accessible to disabled people, but that's another story. But yeah, the bill room is a great resource. You just need to know it on the phone.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I suppose there's a bill in subcommittee that the Swedish Americans can get a 10% discount on their state taxes, and I think that's a really, really good idea. And I show up, this is my in favor of it, but I'm not asked to testify. How do they know whether I'm there in support or in opposition?
A couple of things you can do. First of all, when you get there, you can introduce yourself to the patron of the bill. Know who's patron of the bill, the person who put the bill forward, and you tell them that you're there in support of the bill, because that can really give them some ammunition to say, and I have someone here who wants to speak in support of the bill. That will guarantee that you would be recognized if the need is there. Or the patron might say, I got the votes for this, thank you for coming, and still staying in here.
How do I know who the patron is?
It's on the bill.
And will he be surrounded by 4 people and I can't get up to it?
Oh, you push your way through.
Yeah.
Don't be shy during this process. You get to the patron.
Yeah. If you go to the LIS personal pages, so you can see a picture of what the person looks like. Because I will say that the GA, there are a lot of older white men with white hair. And so it's very easy to sort of miss.
And sometimes you don't have to go online. You can actually walk around the building and, if you want to try to catch someone in the hallway, you know where the offices are. Yeah, so what's that? The red one?
Yeah, pick up a red book. This is, be sure it's but get this one. This will be your Bible. There's a first edition and a second edition sometimes. So pick this up. They'll be ready probably by the beginning of the second week.
Yeah.
It'll be at the front desk, and it doesn't cost anything. You just ask the nice ladies for a copy, and this is your Bible the entire time you're there.
Speaking of when that comes out, can we talk about dates?
January 9th is the opening.
January 9th is the opening day.
Crossover is February 5th, and the session ends February 23rd.
And the last day for us to introduce is the 11th.
We have a question about crossover.
My bill is the bill that's going to change put a traffic light in. So that bill goes to the committee. Let's say the committee likes that bill and they report the committee. Committee can do a couple of things, okay? Committee could vote the bill down. If the bill would fail, there's not enough votes. They could vote to report the committee. They could, for instance, they could say, oh, there's a financial impact for putting this up. And they could say, we want to send this to one of the money committees, to finance or appropriations. They could also do something called PBI in the bill. You'll hear that a lot. PBI means pass by indefinitely. That means the bill is gone. It doesn't mean they can't resuscitate it. They can always resuscitate it. But PBI in the bill means you're killing it. So my bill comes out of committee, right? And it goes to the House, goes to the House floor. It gets read 3 times on 3 different days, although at the end of the session they will often read a bill 3 times in the course of one day because they're trying to move them. Great. But the House has to be done with all the House's bills by the 5th of February. And if it hasn't dealt with that bill yet, that bill stays on the House side and dies, even if it passed committee.
Okay. And if it got to the floor and it passed in the House, then on February 5th, it comes over to the Senate. And the Senate has to act on it. So you have 2 opportunities to kill a bill.
And that's vice versa, right?
And all the Senate bills will then go over to the House bill. And that gets a little confusing for folks because you get the crossover and all of a sudden people are hearing senators talk about House bills and hearing delegates talk about Senate bills and they go, but I thought you just told me that this.
And it's even more confusing when they both have a similar bill
Yes.
on both sides.
Identical bill.
Identical bills.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
That was what happened with the ultrasound bill last year, and that's why a lot of the media going in prior to the protest was saying that this ultrasound bill, mandatory ultrasound, had already passed both. And then, so it was a done deal because it had already passed both. It was an identical bill, and on each side they already passed it. And the actions that took place were actually basically just after the crossover. So it was very confusing because we were going to listen to the House bill and went to the wrong side because we need to be in the Senate gallery. It's almost like double jeopardy. It's like 2 opportunities to get the bill through.
Did that help you?
Yes.
So on that note, where does the House and the Senate meet? Is it in the same building? Is it on the same floor? Am I going to get lost?
They on the
You're
council.
going to get lost.
Something about that. One thing we have interns every year, and I tell my interns, because of security issues, there is a tight security presence at the Capitol. When you go through, you're going to go through a metal detector under every circumstance. If you have something in your purse that you do not want the police to see, or in your jacket or something, bear that in mind when you go through, because it would be deeply embarrassing for everybody concerned. Let's put it that way.
We have that same talk. We tell people, please leave your pocket knives, scissors, all those sorts of things.
Any pipes, any things
anything that could be misunderstood. You know, clean as clean can be. But another piece that we tell people is if you have medications you need to take, please bring those with you because you could be there a long time. If you need to eat, especially people who are diabetic, have snacks in your purse. There is a cafeteria on the 6th floor. It can be very expensive.
It's not very good.
And well, yeah, we didn't get into that. If you're hungry, you know, all of a sudden a piece of something looks good. A piece of something, we don't know what it is. But you know, take care of yourself when you're recruiting citizens to go, asking people to go. And you, take care of yourself. If you need snacks, have that in your bag. Because there's really nothing around to like run across the street and get something, especially if you're trying to keep up with when something's going to occur. Also realize that you may have to take the steps if you're trying to get someplace fast. I mean, these sound like, okay, everybody should know that, but I've been there a lot of times and people come and they go, I didn't know I had to do this, or I didn't bring my medication, or I don't have money for food, or something like that. So I just trying to go through things that I know come up for me with citizens being. Yeah, if you can get there without taking a car, it's absolutely very helpful to you. If not, the further you park away, the cheaper it is. If you park close, it could cost you as much as $20 or more a day. And if you get a ticket, it's going to cost you more. So don't park in 2-hour parking because you can't run and move your car every 2 hours. But if you can park and take the bus in, that's very good. If you're planning to be there all day, kind of get a sense of your schedule. If you go to Virginia General Assembly website, you can get the schedule for the day. And if you're going to be there late, just kind of know that so you'll know what your time frame is. You can also get escort to your car. And I didn't do that until 2 years ago. You can get an escort if you're there after dark, and you can get an escort. Security can walk you to your car. Very helpful.
Yeah. And to cast the question that you posed to the panel earlier, did we? I don't know. I want to make sure we addressed if anyone had any confusion about the General Assembly building versus the Capitol, and what happens in the General Assembly building, what happens in the Capitol in terms of subcommittee hearings, the offices of the legislative. Okay,
General Assembly building, 9th and Broad, right?
That's the office.
That's where all the committees meet most of the time. Yeah, just for all the committees meet there, and the subcommittee meet here. You will go to security here.
That's where their offices are.
And their offices,
Yeah.
yes, that's what I'm thinking. That's where their offices are. All of the offices for delegates and senators are in this building.
It's a good thing. It's very centralized. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like going to DC where you're walking a mile between Rayburn and Hart or something like that.
And you can just go right into the offices. So if you take the elevator up to the appropriate floor, you can make the whole circuit and talk to probably not the legislators, but probably the legislative aides. So
And you want to ask for them, and
Yeah.
the little red book will give you their names.
Yeah.
And it's good to ask the secretary. Be very nice to the secretary.
Secretaries are the gatekeepers.
They are.
Very nice to the
Seriously,
secretary.
be very nice to
Very
everyone.
nice to you.
It's very helpful. You just kind of throw them in ballots as you go through the building.
You
And
do.
you're going to return them, don't remember if it's not like the last time.
Yeah.
I literally had people, security, who told me when bills were going to actually be heard.
security is not there.
They're like, oh, okay, I heard them talking, this committee meeting ended early, and
Yes.
that's because this is going to happen.
Right.
So yeah, be friendly to everyone.
Make friends.
And it's something I wanted to point out too, that this is because we're on close quarters, okay? We're all here are progressives. We're all, we all know our politics and stuff. But one, a lot of the staff are not partisan. They basically work for the General Assembly. They're not people you should be grumpy at, Two, remember that when you're having a conversation, you don't know who's around the corner, So when you go, oh, Senator so-and-so is up, you know what? You don't know that he or his aide is not standing right behind you. Or his intern, or whatever. So, you want to go down there, being passionate and being righteously angry and stuff is good, but be smart about it. Be smart about it, and the aides and stuff. Their job is they take a lot of flack for their people. Your job, yelling at them does no good.
You should. It is a process that you don't ever know who's on the elevator. You don't know who's in the bathroom. You really don't know who's standing. Like if I'm talking to Scott, I don't know who this is. And if you're really trying to be a good advocate, lobbyist for yourself and for your issue, you want to stay credible. Credible with the legislative assistants, credible with the legislator, and you want to be seen as a really good citizen advocate. So, just remember that if you need to go blow some steam, go stand behind a tree somewhere. Big tree. Please.
I was going to suggest that what you said is sort of like the way it should work, but we have to there's another website you might want to look at called vpat.org, vpap.org, where it tells you where the goddamn money comes from.
Yes.
Pardon me, where the money comes from. And these people, they're basically in Virginia, it's almost impossible to be elected for corruption because if they did this stuff in New Jersey or they did in Maryland, they go to jail. In Virginia, they never go to jail except for one instance where the guy was so stupid he voted in.
But you're right.
be helpful, because it's one thing to lobby, it's another thing to actually, most of our bills die, we lose almost all the time. And so it might be helpful for Molly and some other folks to kind of share with folks the experience you had when we put 1,000 people on the street twice and changed the direction of the legislature.
We're going to actually talk about that. Yeah, we're
Because
going to cover how we react.
the way it's supposed to happen is one thing, how it really happens is another, and there's a whole lot of money behind these things. So if you're going up against an individual power, you probably lose. If you're going up against a big corporation, you probably lose.
So we want to talk about, one of the things that we wanted to point out today is that we don't have money, we have organized people. And so we are going to talk about how to move to action and get influence from a different perspective as we saw happen last year. But just the nuts and bolts we're trying to go over so people understand what's happening.
I guess I keep picking this up. Yeah, so that's the General Assembly building. That's where their offices are, it's where the committees meet. This is the Capitol, and the Capitol is where they go when they're in session, and if you watch, both sessions are broadcast. Well, not broadcast, they're on their webcast. And so you can watch them in session. Unfortunately, committees are not in session. Or not webcast, at least not yet. But so that's the Capitol. You can go over there, you can sit in the gallery. At this point, because security has gotten so tight and such a pain in the butt, you have to go around to the Bank Street entrance to get in. I would tell you to stay in the GA building and watch it in one of the conference rooms if you want to see that.
So I actually just have a different perspective on that, and nobody was in the galleries with me. And obviously, it depends on how controversial a bill is and what's going on externally. But I know that with some of the bills we went stuff last year, we would go to the gallery every day, and they would pass by because they would see our numbers. And they kept hoping, I mean, it was sort of a known thing, they kept hoping that eventually we'd have to go back to work or somewhere and not be there for the actual debate.
I mean, they'll hear, for instance, that the line to get into the room to the gallery is down the stairwell. They'll hear that from someone else. They're looking up while they're down. If anyone's seen Movie Lincoln recently, that's what it all looks like. They're down there and they're here, and they're like looking up, and you can wave to them, and they know, then they know that you're there.
It's definitely better to be earlier in the process, get it at subcommittee, get it at committee, but if there's something that you're strongly passionate about that has that sort of movement behind it, the physical presence in the gallery, especially if there's a way that it can make it on your body know what side you're there for, definitely does make a difference in terms of what they hear. Really quick also on that, because I found this out the hard way, the security on the House side is much more lax than the Senate. So on the House side, you don't actually go through an additional metal detector. You can have your smartphone, various equipment with you. I was kind of like live blogging from inside the room what was going on Facebook. On the Senate side, you go through an additional detector. There's things that you have to leave outside, including all of your smartphones, communication devices. So if you need to stay in touch with someone, I'm a medically involved child, so this was a very complex thing for me to figure out at the last minute. But you can't have anything on you in the room.
So that's why it's good to have both. If you can get more people there, folks can stay at both places. You can have people both. But you have a question.
I'm confounded by the duplicate bill thing where we see, just as an example, the contraception one. Because it is 1314 and 1315 House bills. And then there's a Senate bill.
Those are actually two separate bills. They look almost identical, but they actually pertain to the same thing, but they're two different bills. I can talk to you about that after.
Is the Senate bill identical to one in the House?
I believe not.
Well, there are a couple of bills with the term contraception in that guarantees access to contraception. Bob Marshall has a bill, the famous Bob Marshall, has a bill that would make it much harder to get access to contraception. So you have to watch out that. What will happen a lot of times is you'll see a patron will put in a bill with certain language and other patrons will put in the same language. And you go, well, why would they put in the same bill to different people? One is sometimes they want to be able to claim that that's their bill too. There's one bill would come out of that bill. They'll combine the bills in committee, but they want to be able to say, I also introduced language that would do this or whatever. The other thing is that they'll send their idea to LIS, which is Legislative Information Services, and legislation. Then what they'll do, LIS will kick out language that's the same language because they both ask for the same thing. A lot of times legislators don't write the bills themselves, which is where we were talking earlier about the fact that sometimes they have problems with the language. They'll say, well, I'd like the bill to make it harder for women to get abortions, and I'd like it, here's the part of the code that I want to mess up, and I'm not a lawyer, I don't know how to do it. Will you guys show me how to do that? And we go, well, yes, we will. And then they push it out. And sometimes they make mistakes, sometimes they don't do it exactly right. But that's where a lot of the identical bills come from.
I was piggybacking off that. I think 5 minutes to actually go through. These are some of the bills that Kat has slogged through, and we put them up here. And I don't know if everyone can see them all. Do we want to see this? We're ready to move
No,
on?
I think we're ready to move. We just gave you an overview of the process. We really want to get to the bills that have already been filed, so we can get people familiar with that. And then we want to get to the last 10 or 15 minutes on a little bit about action steps.
And really quickly, I just wanted to put out, I guess, a little bit of as I'm listening to us up here. I realize that I know for myself, a lot of my examples are referencing women's bills from last year. That's just because that's what my experience has been with, specifically as I was going through the learning process. Obviously not because that is, the only issue at hand that we're paying attention to. Likewise, these bills come from different areas. Kat did an amazing job walking through them. There are a whole lot of bills. First of all, it's only things that were actually already submitted and already available. So that was like the world of possibility that could even be out there, and then it had to be slogged through and pulled down. So, like, by no means, I think there's a bill out there that's really important. If it's not on here, please bring it to our attention. It's not intentional in any way. These are the ones that we're discussing, and we definitely do not need to be concentrating on any particular issue. You each may just know a little bit more about some of them compared to what we practiced. Just want to make sure that's understood.
On that note, this is also not an exhaustive list simply because of the time. This is accurate as of 2 days ago. That's the last time I checked the database. And the database, by the way, is lis.virginia.gov. This is the official website of the legislature. They post their bills in their full language there. And what I mean by full language is the entire text. I didn't bring the entire text with me because we don't need that. But in any case, they have until either the 11th or the 18th to finish filing bills, which means that they can sneak some in at the last minute. You may be hearing about some on the news that we don't know about now because they've been, holding it back. They're a bit late. So as of right now, we have a selection of about 40 bills that we identified as probably of interest to this round. And I'm not going to just sit here and read through the bill one by one because that would be boring. So what I want to do now is sort of take requests, I guess. Are there particular areas of concern that you have that you want to know if there's legislation up at this time about? Yes, sir.
Well, Senator Black introduced the bill to reduce the number of petition signatures needed to, I think it's 560 or 650.
That is true.
And what he wants to do is take the 10,000 down to 5,000, but he only wants it to be for presidential primaries. Well, our position is that it should be for every statewide election, for everybody running, governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general as well.
Okay.
So I would love everybody to join in to make some noise on this one, because this has a chance to get through. It's in elections committee, but according to deeds, they're just going to kill it.
Well, that's a bummer. The bill that this gentleman is referring to, by the way, is HB 1346, which would reduce the number of petition signatures from 10,000 to 5,000 for presidential primaries for independent candidates specifically. Which means that instead of when you're trying to get somebody to run on the ballot, you can't just declare that you're going to run and then be on the ballot. To be on the list of people to vote for, you have to get a certain number of signatures. This reduces it. And this gentleman has a ballot signature here, so if you'd like to experience one of those for yourself afterwards.
Yeah, I've got a question. Since the Newtown shooting, do you know if anybody in the legislature, either the Senate or the House of Delegates, have anybody introduced legislation to ban assault weapons in Virginia? I'm running for governor, and that is one of the things that I will propose the day I get inaugurated, if it is not done before then. I feel very strongly that while people have a right to have a gun to protect their family and property, the Second Amendment does not give you a right to go out and commit mass killings. There's no reason for anyone to have an AK-47 or a weapon that can shoot off hundreds of rounds. I'm not trying to take anybody's hunting gun away from them, but I'm sick and tired of people being murdered.
Yeah, do you want to speak on?
Great, a month or two great, but all of the House of Delegates are up for election this year, and so it's a good time to take what you've learned during session and go have a meeting with them in their district office and talk about what you heard, what you learned, how you feel, what's important to you, and then, as you said, build that into, if you want to have them put in legislation, start that process early. But we want to continue to move it. It's not just a one-time session. We need to be engaged in this all through the year.
Real quick, I'm going to interject with an announcement because I see some people moving. The new time for part one is officially through 3:45, so don't feel like we need to jump over and start without you. So we're until 3:45. Part two will be 4 to 5:15. Also, the next session's had a couple of minutes. I'll save those till right before we break.
Yeah, do you have a question?
Well, I was going to make a comment. Please sign my petition before you leave if you have not. I'm very passionate about running for governor, but I can't do it without you. Okay? I want to be your voice. I need you guys to be my legs and to sign my petition. Thank you.
And do we want to get through any other bills we have until 3:45? So it's about.
Would ensure, Virginia's already got a right to work state, but there's an amendment that will make it much more
Tell them that that's a bad thing.
I would say that that's a bad thing. Your chances, I think, what, 4%, 4.5% less on average pay in right to work state. But that deals with right to work and with secret ballots in union card check material.
Actually, HJ 536, which I believe is the one you're talking about, also includes a clause that declares industry-wide unions as criminal conspiracy.
That would be the high school senator reading. Yeah. And it would require that delegates to a constitutional convention would vote the way the General Assembly had ordered them to vote, and they would be removed, and it would be a felony if they voted in any way that the General Assembly didn't want them to vote. There's another one that wants to break up the Electoral College in Virginia by district, because right now it's winner take all, and Virginia at the national level is getting bluer and bluer, and so they would like to break it up so that would work along the same lines as redistricting is done. I talked about 8 Republicans and 3 Democrats in the House. So I mean, it's hard to pass a constitutional amendment, but we should be careful and keep an eye out for these guys.
Obama would have lost Virginia if that bill was passed.
He would have lost, yeah.
How does the process work to pass a constitutional amendment? Just like quickly, like how is that different?
It has to be passed twice, and it has to be consecutive sessions with an election in between. So bills that are up now, if they pass out of the House, they would have to come back and be ratified again.
And what Scott was talking about is what will affect federal elections, because we took 11 congressional representatives. That's federal, and then we've been a lot earlier talking about just our state terms.
I think we had a question here and there and there. And there. All right, so let's count off and do it.